Good morning, everyone. Hope everybody is having a wonderful day today. What I wanted to cover today is a tutorial for an early game cheap ship that you can go ahead and make that'll help you navigate from the start of your game on into the mid game. This is a really basic ship that has been inspired by Splitsy's Ugly Duckling. It is cheap, doesn't require any of the DLC, but is also highly modifiable as you need more stuff later on. The biggest thing about it is that it does have a drill, a small connector, several thrusters in all of your major directions, and a simple rover seat. All of that attached to a single battery and landing gear, while also including an antenna and an ore detector. Now, the nice thing about this is that it is fairly cheap. The only thing that you will need access to is cobalt. You'll need cobalt so that way that you can make the metal grids that are used in the thrusters. Other than that, though, most everything else is pretty cheap. All you'll need is stone, or iron, nickel, and silicon. That being said, let's go ahead and move this one out of the way so that we can build a fresh one and see how it all gets put together. So, the first thing that we're going to want to start off with is we'll grab a fresh bar here. If you're unfamiliar with being able to add items to your toolbar at the bottom, just press the G key if you're on PC, and that will allow you to access this menu here, and then from here you can go ahead and add either by dragging and dropping the icons directly to the bar or by right-clicking on them. In this particular case, I've already filled out the bar, but we'll go over the items. The first one you're going to need is the landing gear. And this is going to be useful because you're going to use it to build off of. The next is going to be your battery. This is going to be your primary power source. Then you'll have your gyroscope, which will be used for turning and maneuvering the ship. The drill is obviously going to be necessary for, drilling. Then we're using the rover cockpit here. This one is not DLC dependent. This is actually part of vanilla, so you can go ahead and use this one. However, if you do have the DLCs, I recommend utilizing one of the saddle cockpits, either the 2 wide or the 3 wide. I might have that backwards. I think I do. Yeah, the 2 wide is the compact, the 3 wide is the regular one. Either of these work, but if you don't have the DLC, stick with the rover cockpit. If you add the large atmospheric thruster group, it's the one that has the plus here, it will include all of the atmospheric thrusters that are available, including the DLC variants. The next thing that you want to add is the small conveyor. The small conveyor is actually going to be incredibly useful because this will allow us to extend the capabilities of the ship further on, specifically by changing the location of our small connector or by adding additional cargo storage later on. The next thing that we need to add is the connector. And again, this is the connector group, which will also include the small connector, which we will be adding to the side of the drill. We'll be adding the ore detector so that we can detect ore. Hopefully that's self-explanatory. And then the last piece that we're going to need is an antenna. The reason why the antenna is useful is because not only will it make it easier to track where your ship is, should you be away from it, but also if you're just using the drill ship in a way to detect ore and you want to get off of it and use your personal hand drill, then you'll be able to go ahead and see where the ore is as long as you're within antenna range of the drill ship. But let's go ahead and hop back. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to add our landing gear. Now, when you first grab your landing gear to put it out, it is going to most likely be in large grid format. All you have to do is hit the button again, so in this case 1, and that will give you the small grid version. Drop it down. Now, I am doing this in creative mode. This is simply for the purposes of demonstrating how to build the ship. You will actually get a non-creative mode version, which will just be the framework, and then you will have to go ahead and add the parts to it. So the next thing you want to do is you want to add your battery, and since you will be looking at the landing gear, it's going to go ahead and give you the small grid version. Go ahead and plonk that down. Although not there. Let's try and center it a little bit. There we go. Just makes it feel a little bit better that way. Once you have that in the location that you want, the next thing you're going to want to do is take your conveyor junction, or small conveyor junction, put it towards the top of the side of what will be your front for the ship. So to make that a little less obtuse. What you'll want to do is whichever side of the battery is going to be the front of your ship, that will be the side that you put the conveyor junction on, and then put it towards the top, since you have a 2x3 face to work here. 2 tall, 3 wide. Put it kind of in the middle and towards the top. Boink, there you go. Next up, you're going to go ahead and add the drill, and the drill actually has 3 ports on it. It has one on the back, it has one on either side. So just by aiming at the junction here, you're going to be centering it, and you're attached. So there goes the first part of the ship, the basic part of the ship, the bit of the ship that actually matters. The next thing that you can do here is take your gyroscope and put it right underneath of the conveyor junction. After that, add your ore detector. And then we're going to add our antenna here. And both of these are rotated into the spots, so that way they don't take up a whole lot of space. Kind of make it an inline thing. And actually, the side that the ore detector or the antenna are on don't really matter. They can swap. It's fine. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and grab our connector. And specifically, we want the small connector. And go ahead and attach it to one of the side conveyor ports. Now, the reason why this is important, if you're not aware or you're still fairly new to the game, is that by connecting it to one of the conveyor ports, either on here or on the side of the drill, is that it allows you to not only gain access to the inventory of the drill, but also to gain access to any other connected inventory through the conveyor system. So if we were to then add, let's say, a small cargo container here, we would be able to get access to this cargo container through this port. So always make sure that you're lining those up and connecting them correctly. There is also a difference between large conveyor ports and small conveyor ports, but that's for a different tutorial. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that one. The next step is to go ahead and add our rover cockpit. For that, we can go ahead and put it on either side. I'm going to go ahead and put it kind of on the left side, since it's not 3 wide, but 2 wide. Like your mom. But since it's 2 wide, it won't sit on there centered. For those of you who have major OCD about that, I'm sorry. The DLC cockpits, though, specifically the saddle cockpit, will fit correctly on here since it is 3 wide. But once you have that attached, the next step is to go ahead and take the atmospheric thrusters, and specifically the ones that we want are the small atmospheric thruster. And you want to go ahead and set one here facing towards the back, and you can tell which direction it's facing based off of the fins off of the back, or the thruster exhaust port. And then the front will have the fan here, the intake fan. So this is going to be your forward thruster, or the thruster that propels you forward. Then we want to go ahead and add a second one. That'll be our reverse thruster. So that way we have both forward and backward taken care of. The next step is to go ahead and add 2 downward facing thrusters here. And the reason why you want to do that is because you're going to need a little bit more downward thrust than you need the other directions. Since this has a certain amount of mass, and especially when you use the drill as an inventory system, you're going to put some stuff in there, and so you're going to need to be able to lift that. So 2 atmospheric thrusters should be about adequate for that. Just make sure that you push them down a little bit, so that way this reverse thruster, or excuse me, this forward thruster doesn't melt this one or do damage to it. The next step is to go ahead and bring our thrusters back up, and we're going to scroll through the list until we get to the small flat atmospheric thrusters. Now, ordinarily on a large grid, they look like this. In small grid, they look like this. And you're going to want to put 2 of them on here. And those will be your side thrusters. So that will allow you to move side to side after you put 2 more on here. And there you go. That is the basic ship. You will have all 4 of your major directions plus lift. So forward, backward, left, right. You will also have your lift thrusters. You have a landing gear here, so that way you can go ahead and attach yourself to the ground. You have your drill, which will also act as a small amount of inventory. Not a lot, but enough. You have a cockpit for navigation. And then if you use your suit lights, you will actually have built-in headlights. You don't have to add any, but if you wanted to add an interior light, a flood lamp, or anything of that nature, you absolutely could. Plenty of space or attachment points to do that with. Now, the next bit of business is to go ahead and hop into the cockpit. And you're going to want to hit the G key, and this is going to open up your toolbar config for the ship itself. Now, there's a couple of very specific and important things that you want to add. The first is the drill. And to do that, you actually want to go to Tool Blocks, not to Home. What this will do is go ahead and allow you to add the drill as a tool rather than just a regular block. The reason why that's important is so that way when you're here in the cockpit and you hold left click, it will attempt to drill and collect resources, just like the personal drill. And if you right click, it will attempt to clear out any of the voxel terrain, just like, again, the personal drill, but without collecting any resources. Again, hit G, go back to home, and then what you're going to want to do is look for your landing gear block here, pull that down to the number 2 slot, and add switch lock. What that will allow you to do is just press the number 2 key on your keyboard to lock or unlock the landing gear. And we're going to look at one other option attached to that in just a second. But the last thing that you want to do is you want to add your small connector. Now, personally, I like to add this to the number 9 key, but you can put it on any one that you want. And specifically, we're going to scroll down to switch lock, very similar to the way that we have on the landing gear. And we'll look at that in a second as well. Once you have those added, hit escape. Now press the K key. And that's going to bring up your control panel for the ship, or for any grid that we're attached to. What we want to look at is the landing gear. And this actually has a couple of important options here that we want to look at. The first is auto lock. Now, by default, auto lock is turned on. And what that essentially does is that every time the landing gear is close enough to a lockable surface, whether that's your armor blocks, the ground, an asteroid, a ship, it doesn't matter. As long as it's a lockable surface, it will attempt to lock to that surface. If you want that on, go ahead and leave it on. Otherwise, I like to turn it off so that way I have a little bit more control over being able to lock the landing gear. And that's why I have it attached to the toolbar. And then the last one is used for parking. So if you use P for the parking brake, or for parking, what that means is that it will attempt to switch the landing gear lock on or off based off of whether you're parking or not. Now, I don't generally use parking, but if you want to make sure that you are setting this up for the future, just to make it easier on yourself, go ahead and use turn off used for parking. And then that should be it. You want to make sure that you can check your options here, like the range on your ore detector. If you're on Steam, there are mods that can actually make this range a little bit longer, which is useful, but also double check this broadcast using antenna. Broadcast using antennas basically means that if the ore detector sees something and the grid that it's attached to, or the ship that it's attached to, has an antenna, it will then transmit what it sees to you or anybody else within range. So if you and a friend are playing and you and your friend are in the same faction, then you'll both be able to see what this has. Other than that, though, that is all you need to look at. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. And this is the ship fully completed. Looks a little bit different than that one, but positioning is not super important for most things except for your connector. The biggest thing about your connector is that you want to make sure that it's on a side that you are going to then connect to the base. In this particular case, we're using the inline small connector, small inset connector. So that way we can connect to the base and charge it up off of the battery or the windmills, wind turbines. Sorry. Once you're ready to use the ship, all you have to do is unlock it from the ground. Use spacebar to lift up. Your mouse will be able to maneuver it. Now, I do recommend being a little gentle on the throttle. Get used to the way that it flies first, if you're unfamiliar with flying ships. And we'll come over here to this boulder and we'll go ahead and take a look at getting some silicon out of it. You can already see that ore detector is working. So we'll go ahead and right-click drill to get a little bit of the side out of the way. And then from here, we can collect some of the stone and the silicon that are in it. Now, this doesn't have a proper inventory or cargo container, so you're actually using your drill to store whatever you collect. So if you look at the bottom of the screen there, you will see that there is a bar that is going from light blue towards brown and then eventually red. Once that gets full or near full, the next thing you want to do is make sure that you keep this as level as possible. It's not super powerful. It has just enough power to kind of get the job done. So do be careful there. Like I said, try and keep it as level as possible. Come back to your base. And you can either go ahead and land it and pull everything out by hand, or use the small inset connector and the small connector on the side of the ship. Just kind of gently slide up towards the side here with the connector. Hit the 9 key to switch the lock. And from there, the base is going to automatically try and pull everything out of it into the refinery. And if you leave the ship here for a little while, it'll also go ahead and start recharging the battery. But there you go. A quick, easy, and dirty ship that you can use to go ahead and cheaply get yourself moving towards your mid-game after you get your starter base started. Plus, this gives you lots of options to go ahead and upgrade it in the future. You could go ahead and take the thrusters off of here, add additional battery for power storage, swap them out to full-size atmospheric thrusters if you wanted to. If you're using thruster mods, being on the Steam version, you could go ahead and even add those to it. You could eventually add second and third drills, move your connector around. But in general, this is going to allow you a lot of flexibility to get started and really get into the meat and potatoes of the game until eventually you get a new mining ship built for yourself. Hopefully, though, this is helpful and you're able to go ahead and utilize what I've shown off here to get deeper into Space Engineers. If you guys have any questions or comments, make sure to leave those down below. If there's anything else you'd like to see, also go ahead and let me know there as well. Other than that, though, as always, thank you all for joining me on these misadventures. You all have a wonderful day, stay out of trouble, and remember, if you get caught, I don't know you. I'll catch you guys later.